Good morning. How's everybody? Feeling good? It's a beautiful day. Hey, thanks to the ladies and anybody else who may have helped with the lunch for the lectureship. It was definitely the best of all the lunches there. I'm not biased at all. It was the best. I'm not kidding. I bet I could get a list of names who would say the same thing. Y'all did great. We had plenty of food, and appreciate the elders for helping in that as well. And thanks to everybody who showed up to support the lectureship as well. It was great. It was one of the best. It was the 20th year of it, so a little bit of a special year. And Isaac did great, and Eddie did great. Megan did great. And so, yeah, it was good. So thanks for supporting. Thanks for supporting that coming out, especially yesterday. Okay, we are in the book of Daniel. Chapter number 1, right? This is such a good book. Don't y'all like this book? This is great. Have y'all been reading ahead? You probably have. Reading ahead and getting all the spoilers. I'm gonna read verse 1. Now, we've already said some things about 1 and 2. I'm not gonna go over all of it, but I'm just gonna go through. We can read the first 5 verses here. That's what we'll do. Okay, are you ready? Here we go. Daniel chapter 1, verse 1 says, In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with some of the articles of the house of God, or the vessels, the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar, that's Babylon, to the house of his God. And he brought the articles into the treasure house of his God. And then the king instructed Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, to bring some of the children of Israel, and some of the king's descendants, and some of the nobles, young men in whom there was no blemish, but good-looking, gifted in all wisdom, possessing knowledge, and quick to understand, who had ability to serve in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the language and literature of the Chaldeans. And the king appointed for them a daily provision of the king's delicacies and of the wine which he drank, and 3 years of training for them, so that at the end of that time they might serve before the king. All right. So we've noticed this. I remember the beginning of verse 2 there, where it says, and the Lord gave. The Lord did this. And so in man's eyes, there's just an army coming in, and they're just doing their thing, and they're conquering. This is what human history, this is what it's all about. From heaven's eyes, God was involved with it. And of course, that's the truth. Heaven is involved. God got involved here. That's the theme that runs throughout the book. All right, now 3 through 5. Now, what happened here? Daniel and all the captives, that this group of captives come, and this is probably not isolated just to Babylon to do this to their captives. I would imagine other empires did it as well, but here we have a record of it. And so you take you take the best of the people that you have conquered, basically. But maybe as Babylon didn't just go up against Jerusalem, right? They were ruling the whole world. They were the world empire at the time. They were the big fish in the sea. And so they probably did this to everybody, but I would say, especially the Jews, though, I would say that Nebuchadnezzar knew that there was something different about the Hebrew people than everybody else. One writer says this. He says that Babylon could not have been ignorant of the fact that the Hebrews claimed to have communications with God. Doubtless, they had doubtless heard of their prophets, and of the Hebrews being able to foretell what was to occur. So it could be that word got to Nebuchadnezzar. Like, hey, you know the Hebrew people, you know they have this prophet named Isaiah or something like that. And he was actually saying that our nation was actually going to come and do exactly what you did. He said that years ago. I think we need to pay attention to that, King. And did you know that, King, that there's a guy named Jeremiah or something like that? He's still actually over there in Judah, and he's been saying this whole time that you were going to come and do this, and actually you're going to come and you're going to destroy Jerusalem completely. Something was going on in the Hebrew land that just was different than all the other nations, and I think Nebuchadnezzar knew that, and so of course he's going to want the best of those people to serve it in his government. And two, I think that doing this, you've got this conquered people, and you're just you're shipping them all into your own land. Do you think there could be some problems eventually that come from that? You think they're going to just love your land, love being stripped away from their home and from their families? No. What's going to happen? Rebellion, perhaps. So how do you kind of prepare for that, or kind of try to make sure that doesn't happen? Well, take some of their own people and put them in high positions. And maybe that'll kind of satisfy them, at least for the time being. So that's what he did. Kind of makes it an easier way to control the people. Take some of their people whom they love and they respect and put them in the top spots. And then, of course, you do this because if you take away the best, you go into defeat a nation. And, you know, we hate thinking like this, but it all militarily, I guess it makes sense. You defeat a nation. You don't want them in the faraway land. You know, we're talking like a 3-month between Babylon and which is in Iraq, right? And then to Jerusalem. You're looking like a 3 or 4 month trip back in those days. So it's a pretty good length, pretty good ways away. And so you're going to have people over there, defeated people. Well, you don't want their good, well-respected, wise, intelligent, you know, maybe militarily strong people to stay over there, because they'll just start the rebellion over there, if not in your own place. So you take them and you put them in the high position. So it's a good way to make sure that the defeated people stay defeated. You see, and so that's what's going on. That's what's going on here. Does that make sense? Any questions so far? Beautiful. All right. Let's read 6 and 7. All right. Now from among those of the sons of Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. To them, the chief of the eunuchs gave names. He gave Daniel the name Belteshazzar, to Hananiah, Shadrach, to Mishael, Meshach, and to Azariah, Abednego. That's how we usually say it. Don't you think it's funny that, I don't know if it's funny, but most people know, so we are very familiar with these 3 men, other than Daniel. We know Daniel, then we know these 3 men. But don't you think, I've always thought it's funny that we know them by their pagan names instead of their Hebrew names. So, oh yeah, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Yeah. Oh yeah, those guys, great guys. But what's their Hebrew? What's their actual names? No idea. I don't know. It's just funny to me. So anyways, Daniel. So look at what's going on. Why change the names? So you get these Hebrews and you change their names to Babylonian names.
Why was Saul changed to Paul?
Well, that's totally. Well, God did that. Here we have a heathen. That's different. There are a bunch of names changes in the Bible, yes. But here, well, I got it up here. I forget what I put on the screen. It's really to change these men, to erase their heritage, erase their background. And so none of that was going to interfere with their new lives in these top positions in the Babylonian kingdom. So if you look at Daniel, look at what their names mean. These names are important. Names are important, aren't they? Is your name important to you? Are your parents and is your family name important to you? Of course, we all say yeah. Daniel means God is my judge. Hananiah, God is gracious. Or it might mean something like whom Jehovah was graciously given, something like that. Mishael, who is what God is. Or there's no one like God. That's the idea. Azariah, God is helped. You get the theme? Is there a theme? Is there a common theme running through those names?
Yeah, God.
yeah. The EL on the ends of the name that's the Hebrew for God. Daniel. We probably should be pronouncing it like that, really, but we're too American for that. Daniel. And then the I on Hananiah and Azariah, I-A-H. That's the Yah for Yahweh. So it's a short form of Yahweh. So there's the name of God in their names. But anyway, so that's no. You're going to be serving in Babylon. You can't be bringing that kind of. That's not our God. We don't serve him. And so they changed their names to. I don't think do I have this up there? Yeah, there we go. So you got to get rid of that old life, get rid of that heritage. You get a new one. So Daniel's name was changed to Belteshazzar, which means Baal's prince. Baal, or the god Bel. It's the same god. Well, that's their god. And now, guess what, Daniel? You get to serve. You get to serve our God now, and you get to be named after him. Shadrach means command of Aku, A-K-U. That's just another one of their gods. He's like the god of the moon, I think, from what I understand. He's their god of the moon. Means command of Aku, or Aku has commanded. Meshach means who is like Aku. See, his name was who is. I wonder if they knew. Hey, what's your name mean? This is what it means. We'll change it to something similar, but to our God instead. Who is like Aku? No one is like Aku. And then Abednego means servant of Nego, which is another one of their gods, thought to be the god of their god of wisdom and intelligence. So what do these names do? Well, it's almost like a slap in the face to the Israelites' God, isn't it? It seems to reflect. I think it did serve a purpose of trying to erase their heritage in their own minds, but this was like it reflects an intentional lack of respect for God. And we're going to find out that Daniel wasn't going to have any of it, as we're about to see. Erase God out of their lives. That's what was happening. Verse number 8. Any questions so far?
Yeah, I know.
All right.
How and why was the meat was spoken of in 8 as well as 1 through 5? The meat that the king had was tainted or defiled, whichever word you want to use. Was it meat from idols? Was it not prepared the right way? I understand the wine being alcohol, that, David did not want to defile his body with the alcohol. But I just can't wrap my hands around the meat and why he would not eat of it, but of his own, what he had prepared. Why the difference?
Okay, let's read verse 8 and let's answer that.
Okay.
All right, verse 8. But Daniel, so you go back to verse 5, hey, you get they're going to be fed all this food. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the chief of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. There's nothing he can do about the name change. They're going to call him whatever. People are going to call you whatever they want to call you, and you can't really stop them. But you can choose to not to do other things. And Daniel says, no, I'm not going to do this. Call me what you want. but I'm not going to go along with what you want me to go along with. Now, nothing is really said about the other three men, so we're not to assume that the other three men were like, yeah, sure. And Daniel was the only one who didn't want to do this. I think they would have all done it. I think it's safe to assume, maybe it's not, but that they were following Daniel's lead, these other three men, because they were specifically mentioned along with Daniel. They were following Daniel's lead. And Doug posed a good question. Why didn't Daniel want to eat of the meat? So there's a few reasons why. You can decide which one or how many of these is right according to your judgment. There was in the law of Moses, so in the Hebrews law, they had food restrictions, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What's one food they couldn't eat? I heard pork.
Cloven hooves.
Pork.
Yeah.
I
had that this morning.
Most everybody, yeah. Most everybody knows that. All right. So did was the king's food made up of foods that they couldn't eat? It's possible, but it's possible that it wasn't. But it could have been that the king's food was unclean according to Jewish law. And Daniel was like, even though I'm away from home, I'm still going to try to be as faithful as I can to God, right? Which is, wow, that's a good lesson. Some people can't even go on vacation without sinning. Another reason, their food I got it up here in the book. I almost don't want to do this, but I do want to do this. So you have all this stuff, but I want to ask you questions, but then it's like you can just cheat by looking on the thing. Good chance that everything they ate was offered to idols first. And we see this running all the way through to the Gentile, all those false gods that the Romans that, there's discussion about whether or not Christians should be eating meat that's been offered to idols and things like that. All right, so it's a good chance that they had all of these gods, and the king surely would have been having his priest or whoever offering the food before their idols, and then they would eat it. It's almost like, what do Christians do before their meals? What do faithful Christians do? Oh, they ask God to bless their food. Don't you think that? I think that every culture just about does that. But that would have sort of made it. That would have made it unclean as well to Daniel. And so Daniel didn't want to eat food that had been blessed by these ridiculous pagan false gods. And so maybe that's why he didn't do it.
Why couldn't he take it upon himself like we do as, when we're at restaurants or at home? Why couldn't he offer up his own individual blessing or prayer for the food and do away with,
Well, because he wasn't like us, and he's under the law of Moses, which we are not under the law of Moses, and I think that has a big thing to do with it. Because in the New Testament, Peter received a vision Peter was like, he was seeing a vision of a sheep and all these different foods. Yeah. Unclean animals were in this sheep, and God in the vision is saying, eat, Peter. And Peter's like, no, God, I can't eat unclean things like that. What are you doing? I can't do it. The point was that's no longer a thing. In Christian law, it's amazing to me that Christians are like, well, I don't eat pork, or no, I don't eat this and that because we shouldn't eat that. Like that's not a thing in Christianity. New Testament, matter of fact, explicitly teaches the opposite of that. Anyways, that's another thing.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
If I might elaborate on the swine, what did it mean? Go back to Leviticus 11.
Yeah, Leviticus 11, where you find the big list, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, what?
Can you tie that into this? I was just saying, that's why they didn't eat the pork, they didn't chew the cud. They were considered demons, the swine. It said-
Well, yeah, they were considered dirty, unclean animals, yeah. I wouldn't go far as demons, but they were unclean.
What was it where I thought it was swine that ran off the cliffs?
Yeah, the New Testament, yeah.
Okay, so, anyway, that was.
Pigs aren't possessed by demons.
Well, okay, but I'm just saying, Seventh-day Adventists won't eat pork.
Yeah, okay, so you have the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and I have friends that there, and he's a great guy actually. Yeah, I don't understand. I just don't understand. It's just a misunderstanding of which laws we're under, you know.
Well, they just hone in on 11:7, Leviticus 11:7.
Yeah.
11:7, and they believe that's true.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. And that's why we just need more teaching on what laws we're under and whose authority are we under, and which is why we're having our fundamental class on Monday nights if you're interested in that. Okay, but this raises this last point I made about them, well, I'm not going to eat any food offered to idols. And we say, well, maybe that's what it is. And that sounds pretty reasonable. But don't you think, so now Daniel, what happens is, and we haven't read this, well, if you look down in verse 12 real quick, Daniel's like, hey, can you just give us vegetables? Or the King James might say another word. I don't know what it says, actually. What does it say? Pulse. It's the idea of vegetables, or similar to that. Don't you think their vegetables would have been offered to idols as well?
Well, yeah, because you had different offerings. You had Eve offerings. You had.
No, that's Jewish law. I'm talking about Babylonian law.
Okay.
I don't have any idea what kind of all that. I don't think they had offerings like that. Maybe they did, but we don't know.
Okay.
But that's Jewish law. Yeah, you're right. But it makes sense to me that they would offer all their foods to idols. And so why was the meat not good being offered to idols, but the vegetables was okay? You see that kind of just throws a wrench in it.
Oh boy, a big wrench.
So maybe this is it. And I got this on the bottom there of the screen. That he was taking a defensive position. And what this means is that he didn't want to assimilate to Babylonian culture in any way, shape, or form. He was not going to, and of course I think he was willing to lose his life, as we're going to see later, especially in chapter 6, that he was not going to be molded into a Babylonian. He was going to remain as Hebrew as possible, to keep his Israelite identity as much as possible in this place. He just wasn't going to do it. And I think eating the food would have given off the impression that I've given up. That you've got me, you've beaten me, you've beaten the God that I serve out of me. And I think this is why Daniel's like, I'm not eating your food. I'm going to dictate what I eat. I think that's what's going on. Now, does that make good sense? Yes, sir.
In offerings, in vegetables, there's no blood involved.
Yeah, right.
That's just a thought.
Yeah, no blood involved in vegetables. Vegetables don't scream that I know of. Marshall.
There's a verse in Proverbs chapter 23 says, when you sit down to eat with the ruler, consider carefully what is before you, and put a knife to your throat if you are a man given to appetite. Do not desire his delicacies, for they are accepted food.
Yeah, that's interesting. I knew that proverb was there, but I didn't make the connection. Yeah, you got to wonder, a man like Daniel, you think he would have known the Proverbs pretty well? Daniel?
I think so.
Probably. And so I wonder if Daniel was thinking of that verse. That's a good verse. I might have to add that to my notes, thank you. But regardless, I'm gonna say that I'm gonna say that this, he's taking that defensive position. You're not gonna change me, King. That's why Daniel is doing this. And I think his three friends would have gone along with it, would have followed Daniel's lead in that. I think they were right in doing that. We don't really know. For us to take this hard line dogmatic position on why Daniel didn't eat it that's bad. That's a bad idea. We're not told exactly why Daniel did it, it's just that he did it. But this is a good, you can preach on this, that how a child of God can choose to refuse to defile themselves when we're living in this kind of world, and not to conform to societal pressure or what the world thinks that we need to be, or go giving in to all those temptations. Because I'm sure this king's food was delicioso. Don't you think? Probably good stuff, right? Romans 12 and verse 2 is do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The idea of not conforming, this is right here. This is right here in this text. All right, any comments or questions? Yes, sir.
These four Hebrews were elevated to positions in the Babylonian kingdom.
Yeah, we're going to see that.
And possibly there's loyalty from Daniel to fellow captives who were not given fine meals. They were given the bare minimum, I'm sure.
Mm.
So there was maybe a sense of loyalty to his fellow countrymen.
That's a good thought as well. Like, how could I eat these things, even though it wasn't his choice to be selected like this? How could I do this while my fellow Israelites are eating scraps, perhaps? Yeah, that's a good thought too. That's a very good thought. And you think a man like Daniel would have had that kind of mindset for other people? Yeah, that's a good thought.
Do you think God did not have a hand in what was going on with Daniel versus his partaking of this food versus what the king was providing for him? And then to bring it all full circle, the increase of Daniel and I think it's 3 or 4 other individuals that that ate of that food, they increased in skills and knowledge and understanding and wisdom. But it don't even mention the other ones that ate of the king's food. They were defiled in David's eyes.
Yeah.
And I just feel like God had to have a hand in that.
He did, and the text, we're gonna get there.
Yeah, I know it.
And it explicitly says God gave them those things. Exactly.
That's what I get from reading ahead.
Yeah. Okay, let's look at 9 and 10. All right, so Daniel's like, I'm not gonna do this. And he asked the chief of the eunuchs, can I just do my own thing? 9. Now God had brought, here we have the second mention. The first mention of God getting involved is verse number 2. Now here's the second time. How God is, and I would say, non-miraculously involved in these events. Now, verse 9 says, now God had brought Daniel into the favor and goodwill of the chief of the eunuchs. I don't read miraculous in there. I think there's some miraculous about to happen. That particular one, can God give today? Can God bring you, does God have the power to bring you favor and goodwill in a non-miraculous way? We go, yeah, what? We're like, yeah. Sometimes we might even pray that. God, please do that for us. If we didn't believe he could do it. But he's not going to do it. He can do it non-miraculously. And I don't have the key to open that mysterious box of how God can work things like that, but we know that he does work providentially in the world today, which is Romans 8:28, y'all are familiar with that? There's a verse, if there's any verse in the Bible that says God works providentially in our lives today, it's that verse right there, Romans 8 and verse 28. Which to me, I've always said that it's a far more a greater evidence of how powerful God is than God just snapping his fingers and performing some kind of actual supernatural miracle. His providence is far, far, far better show of his power. Okay, where was I? Number 9. All right, goodwill, the chief of the eunuchs. Verse 10, and the chief of the eunuchs said to Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who has appointed your food and drink. For why should he see your faces looking worse than the young men who are your age? Then you would endanger my head before the king. All right, so again in verse 9, and I've got, do I have it up there? Proverbs 16:7. God's bringing Daniel into the favor and goodwill of these people. Proverbs 16:7 says, when a man's ways please the Lord, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. I mean, that sounds exactly like what we're reading. In verse 8 and 9, really, I'm purposing in my heart that I'm not going to do this. Daniel says, these are the first indicators of Daniel's faithfulness. I don't really see that kind of language so far, but up into verse 8, here's Daniel. Now we know if we had a question about what kind of man of God that Daniel was, now we know, and there's plenty more to follow. But this commander is worried, isn't he? For obvious reasons. Wouldn't you be worried? You serve a violent, and we're going to see how violent, well, not today, but in chapter 2, we're going to see how violent and Nebuchadnezzar really was, how quick to anger he was. And so if that's the king you serve, and the king says, you do something, make these people do this thing, and these people are giving you trouble, aren't you going to start thinking about how much trouble you're going to get into? And he's like, you endanger my head. I don't think that's just some little nice little idiom or euphemism. Actually, I think the guy's thinking, I will literally my head is going to be chopped off by this king if you guys do this. Please don't do this, Daniel. Don't cause me trouble. You are supposed to get all of this good food to fatten you up and make you strong and healthy, and you, after so many days, if you come to the king and he sees that I haven't been getting you to where you ought to be, I'm a dead man. So this man, and I got Matthew 10:28 up there, because we see that the king, or this man, this chief, feared the king more than he feared God. I said, well, he didn't know God. Well, Daniel feared God. We have this contrast between a man who's fearing another man, and then a man who is fearing God. Who do you think is going to turn out better? And that's why I got what Jesus said in Matthew 10:28. So you have to look that up. Comments? Questions? You following the story so far?
I just wanted to bring out, probably the teacher in me, but
Probably,
when you
yes.
were talking about the providential hand of God, that Daniel's parents had to be really great parents. They made him this chief of the eunuchs really he's a likable kid. I mean, that's good parenting, right?
Yeah.
And he's also God-fearing kid, so they made sure he was taught well.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say that Daniel's attitude, his mindset, and his faithfulness definitely reflects upon back home, we would say. Yeah, no doubt about it. Yep, and that's another thing that'll preach as well. All right, let's see. We got 4 minutes. Oh, this is easy. Let's read 11 through 16. This is a little lengthy section here. All right, 11. So Daniel said to the steward whom the chief of the eunuchs has set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Now, so he's talking to a different guy. The eunuch, the chief of the eunuchs was like, man, I can't do this. So Daniel's like, okay, I'll go to somebody else. So he goes to like a lower ranking servant. Verse 12, he says, please test your servants for 10 days. Like, just give us a chance. You can't, nothing bad can happen to you in 10 days. Let them give us vegetables or pulse to eat and water to drink. So no wine. Let our appearance be examined before you, and the appearance of the young men who eat the portion of the king's delicacies, and as you see fit, so deal with your servants. Verse 14, so he consented with them in this matter and tested them 10 days. And at the end of 10 days, their features appeared better and fatter in flesh than all the young men who ate the portion of the king's delicacies. Now, that doesn't mean they actually gained a bunch of weight. That word for fatter means healthy. Flesh than all the young men who ate the portion of the king's delicacies. Verse 16. Thus the steward took away their portion of delicacies and the wine that they were to drink and gave them vegetables. So he's like, all right, as long as they keep looking like this, I'm not going to get in trouble. Let them eat. I'll just let them eat what they want then. And so they turned out just fine. Even better than all the other people. Now here's where I think a miracle had to have taken place, because 10 days of just eating a different diet, and I know some changes will happen in 10 days, and I'm not the diet expert, but it's not a lot of time. And these were young men already. I mean, they were probably already pretty fit anyways. Not a lot of time for a person's physical appearance to so drastically change just from diet, not 10 days. Someone might argue with me that I don't believe that. So I think what happened? God, I think, miraculously intervened in some way. I think now we do have God miraculously coming in here. And this was the beginning of the evidence to the Babylonians that, hold up, this guy is different. These men, Daniel and these 4 men, they are not like everybody else. They're not like the captives from Syria or Egypt. These guys, and they're not like the other Israelites. These guys are different. And Daniel, especially, very unique individual. And that his God must be very different than all of our gods that we're currently worshiping. I think that's the message that this sent. Any comments before we close? We're done for the day. All right. Put a marker there. We'll pick up. We'll finish the chapter starting in verse 17. Then we'll get into chapter 2 where it really gets good. Oh boy, don't it? Daniel chapter 2. That's good stuff. All right. Thanks, everybody. Morning. So good to see you here. We have some visitors and you're our honored guests. Please don't let this be the last time that you come here. Doug, thanks for the longer than normal scripture reading, but I think I wanted to, well, you know what? I just wanted somebody else to read it. I just didn't want to go through all that, because then you'd say, well, he's preaching too long. So I just gave you some of that job. Thanks for that. We'll get back to that passage in a second. There's a story about a certain Christian who had been arrested at the insistence of the Roman emperor. He had heard about this man, that this man needs to be arrested. We need to bring him in. And so they do. And they got this man into custody. And the emperor wanted so badly to make this man deny the Lord and give up his faith in this Christ that these people were believing in. And so the emperor was talking with his advisors about what they could do to him. And he says, should we put him in a dungeon? And they said, oh, no, he'll gladly go there because he longs for that quietness where he can just pray and delight in the mercies of his God. And the emperor's like, well, then we'll execute him. They say, oh, no, you can't do that, because he'll also be glad to die. Because he's told us that if he were to die, then that means he'll be immediately in the presence of the Lord. And so the emperor is kind of throwing up his hands. He said, well, what will we do to him then? And his advisors said this. They said, there's really only one thing that's going to bring this particular Christian pain. To make him suffer, we have to make him sin. This man is afraid of nothing except sin. Now that, as it has come down over the centuries, there supposedly is truth to that story, and there's a name to that Christian man. But you know, I'm not so sure how far off from the truth that story is. That could have happened. And I do believe that there were Christians just like that. And if there still be Christians like that today, we need to ask ourselves if we are one of them. What is it that you fear the most? What are you scared of? What's the thing that you hate the most? It better not be a person. What do you hate the most? Does my love for God cause me to hate the thought of sinning against him and grieving his heart? Is my love for God as great as my hatred of sin? Now in John chapter number 8, 1 through 11, you have a woman being brought before Jesus. Now, if you were to peer into the original Greek, it indicates that she was forcefully dragged to face the crowd that Jesus happened to be in. And the charge was, well, she got caught in the act of adultery. That's verse 4, if you're still open to it. But the man, where's the man? It takes two to do that, doesn't it? But he's nowhere to be found. Now, either maybe when they caught them in the act, maybe the man somehow got away, or maybe they let him go. Maybe they didn't really care much about him, and which, if it's true, really reveals the motive behind the thing that they were doing here. So they have this woman before Jesus, and the scribes and the Pharisees, they were trying to put Jesus in a pickle, we might say, in a dilemma. So they told him of what she was supposedly guilty of, and so if he said that she should not be stoned, not punished, well, then he would be going against the law of Moses, because the law was, if you caught in adultery and you had the witnesses there, then you that was death. They took that seriously. And then if he said, well, she shouldn't be stoned, he'd go against the law, and he would lose all the confidence of those who respected the law. But if Jesus says she should be stoned, then he would be violating Roman law, because you remember that that Judea was under Roman law there, and the Romans kind of took over things, and only Rome had the right to execute this kind of capital punishment. And so they were thinking, whatever Jesus says, he's done for. We've got him. But Jesus responded in verse number 7. He says, he who is without sin among you, let him throw a stone at her first. Y'all heard that before. That, I don't know if you ever caught it, but that is brilliant. The genius of Jesus Christ is coming out here. So what Jesus did by saying that is move the entire scene from a judicial level to a moral level. And when he did that, one by one, those people just left. I know we have to go. What can we say? They couldn't say anything after that. They just left. Folks, when you really figure out what's going on with what Jesus was doing in many cases like this, I don't know how you are not impressed, extremely impressed by Jesus, your Savior. So now all the people left, and there's Jesus and the woman, and nobody's willing to condemn her now. And Jesus wasn't going to condemn her either. Now, he certainly was not. We shouldn't leave the thinking that Jesus condones adultery. He didn't do that in any way whatsoever by saying what he did. He tells her, go and sin no more. In that one statement, he said two things. He condemned the sin by saying that, but he also showed compassion to the sinner. That's what you see in that verse. Go and sin no more. Condemnation and compassion. Now, Jesus Christ's mission when he was here on this earth was to make salvation possible for every single sinner that has ever lived. And guess who that includes here in this building today? Almost all of us. And what I mean by that is the little children. But beyond that, his mission included urging us and compelling us and helping us to do exactly what he told this woman to do here. Go and sin no more. And what we're going to look at real quickly is 5 reasons why we should do exactly that. Now, if this kind of lesson is going to resonate with you at all, you're going to have to think about the sin that so easily ensnares you, not other people. Don't worry about other people. Don't worry about what their temptations are. And I know we don't like thinking about this, but you need to think about the sin that gets you. Everybody's got something they struggle with. Let's be honest. Whether it's apathy, whether it's atheism, everything in between, somebody is struggling with something. And so you put your greatest temptation, whatever it is, you put your greatest weakness in the forefront of your mind. Jesus tells us to go and sin no more because of these reasons. Here's the first one. It's because sin does not satisfy. I know you know this. I know you know all of these reasons. But why do we keep on sinning then? Proverbs 27 and verse 20 says, hell and destruction are never full, so the eyes of man are never satisfied. That word hell in the Hebrew is Sheol, and you might even see it in some translations there. To the Jew, that was the realm of the dead. The realm of the dead, it never fills up. Proverbs 30 and verse 16 says that the grave is never going to ever say, enough, I'm full, because it continually swallows and devours, as it were. And so the same is said of the eyes of man. We mean the eyes of man. What are we talking about? The heart, the mind, our desires. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. Ecclesiastes 1 and verse 8. What's the world all about? More, right? Mankind is the greediest thing alive. And unfortunately, all the things that much of what we take in consist of sin. We consume it, but we're never quite full. We're never satisfied. There's a God-shaped, and this has been said 1,000 times, I'm sure, there's a God-shaped void in our souls that only God can fill. Our souls cannot be satisfied with garbage. Our hearts do nothing but become hardened by the deceitfulness of sin, Hebrews 3 and verse 13, and we keep on sinning, keep on listening to those empty promises that sin offers us. But we can choose to find satisfaction somewhere else. We don't have to get it from sin. We don't have to get it from the world. Moses understood this very thing while he was in Egypt, before the Exodus took place. Now, and over in Hebrews 11, chapter 11, verse 24 and 25 says, by faith, Moses, when he became of age, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin. Moses, what a weird turn of events for history this would have been, but if Moses would have stayed there, he could have been offered the crown of Egypt. Wasn't that a weird thought to think Moses could have been a Pharaoh? Well, he was the son of Pharaoh's daughter. What do you think might have happened there? Yet he gave that up, and he chose to be identified with the one true God instead of all these multiple false gods in a lifestyle that promoted the passing pleasures of sin. Folks, don't we know that sin does not and cannot satisfy us? And I know that people, you feel some kind of satisfaction in the process with a lot of sin. But that's soon followed by shame and guilt and remorse. Maybe not soon, maybe immediately followed by guilt. I should have done that. I should have done that. Why did I do that? God forgive me. But we keep doing it over and over and over again because there's a lot of sin that feels good. And if you're telling yourself that, well, I don't feel those things. I don't feel shame of that when I commit what you're telling me sin is. You know what? If you're saying that, there's a really good chance that what I'm about to say next has already happened to you. Why should we go and sin no more? Because it doesn't satisfy. And number two, because sin enslaves. It's been said that sin is a power that seeks to dominate individuals, leading them into deeper self-destructive habits or corruption. You think that's true? Does sin like to dominate? Have you seen that in other people's lives? Have you seen it in your own life? Or just takes them over? There is a song, and yes, I'm using this as an illustration, in the Muppets Christmas Carol that actually does a good job in describing the nature and the results of sin. Now, these two old Muppets, I'm sure most of you know who they are. Marley and Marley in the song, but they're representing avarice and greed. They say, we're Marley and Marley. They say, our hearts were painted black. Now think about sin, what you know sin to be. Our hearts were painted black. We should have known our evil deed would put us both in shackles. That's how they sing it. Put us both in shackles. Captive, bound, we're double ironed, exhausted by the weight. As freedom comes from giving love, so prison comes from hate. Does that match sin at all? I know that sin is an action, and I know that it's a transgression against the laws of God. It's a law. I break God's law, I sin. It's something that we do. It's action. But to get you to hate sin like God does, maybe you need to kind of personify sin, and you need to hear that sin hates you. You know somebody in your life that you know that they don't really like you too much, and they might have even told you, I hate you, and they mean it. How do you feel about that person? How do you just feel about that, having that kind of back and forth, that relationship with somebody? Sin hates you. It hates everything about you. And our adversary, Satan, the devil, who is very real, that's what he pushes, and he hates you. Sin does nothing but deceive you and hurt you and embarrass you and mock you, make you look like a fool and enslave you. But Christ offers you freedom. And you know that. Romans chapter 6. It's a great chapter. You should read it if you haven't read it in a while. It shows what it means and what it looks like to be dead to sin and alive to God, our Savior. The result that comes from being buried with and unified with Jesus Christ, that results in having a new master. If you look at Romans 6 and verse 18, and having been set free from sin, you became slaves of righteousness. Well, that's a big difference in the kind of servitude. Now you've got a master. If you're a slave of righteousness or a servant of righteousness, now you've got a master that does not hate you, that does not want to hurt you or embarrass you or mock you. But you've got a master now, if you're a slave of righteousness, that he loves you and he wants the very best for you. Jesus said, the truth shall make you what? Free. Free. John 8 and verse 32. The truth is that God has plans to make you prosper. Plans to give you a hope and a future. Jeremiah 29:11. The truth is that God gives power to the weak. Isaiah 40 and verse 29. The truth is that in every single temptation, and I don't know if we believe this or not. We know what it says. But in every single temptation, the truth is that God will make the way of escape that you may be able to bear it. 1 Corinthians 10 and verse 13. Go and sin no more, because all sin does is enslave you. And I know you don't like the thought of that. Here's the next one. Sin robs you of joy. If you look in Psalm 32, you get a really good look into King David's mind. Now, King David was quiet about his sins at first. You ever been like that? King David tried to hide his sins, and he tried to cover up his sins, but when he did that, it just ate at him. He was miserable. Listen to Psalm 32, 3 and 4. He says, when I kept silent, my bones grew old through my groaning all the day long. For day and night your hand was heavy upon me. My vitality, my life, my strength was turned into the drought of summer. Does that sound like he's having a good time and hiding his sins? Feeling really good, huh? But when he confessed his sins, look down in verse 5. I acknowledge my sin to you, and my iniquity I have not hidden. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the iniquity of my sin. For this cause, everyone who is godly, everyone who does not want to hide their sins, does not want to be robbed of joy, does not want to be enslaved, shall pray to you in a time when you may be found. Surely in a flood of great waters they shall not come near him. That is the waters. You are my hiding place. You shall preserve me from trouble. You shall surround me with songs of deliverance. Well, he felt a lot better. You ever been able to finally get something off your chest and how good that feels? Whew, that's over with. You cannot have that joyful confidence when you keep going on after sin. You can't. Here's what sin does. It steals your identity before God. I know people, there's a big identity crisis in the world's cultures today. But there is identity in Christ. Are you a child of God? Then that's who you are. Are you God's beloved? What do you think sin does to that identity of yours? Israel went from the beloved of God to being viewed as an adulterer before God. That's Hosea chapter 1 and verse 2. Well, that's quite the shift in identity. They went from being called God's people to God actually saying, you are not my people, and I will not be your God. That's Hosea 1 and verse 9. And what? Sin won't do that to you today? Sin won't cause God to say that about you today? Has he already said it? Sin steals your peace. How can you have peace of mind when, how can you sleep when you're worried about somebody finding out what you've done? It causes you to worry about being exposed. It causes your mind just to fixate on how can I cover this up? How can I make sure nobody finds out? It makes you deceitful. When maybe otherwise you wouldn't be that way. You can't have peace when you got all that floating around in your head. There's no way. Psalm 38, 3 and 4. There's no soundness in my flesh because of your anger, nor any health of my bones because of my sin. For my iniquities have gone over my head like a heavy burden. They're too heavy for me. If you like being depressed, if you like depression, just keep sin in your life and you'll have it. You'll have what you want. Sin robs you of joy because it severs your connection with God. Isaiah wrote that it was God who increased the people's joy. You have joy because God allowed it to grow in you. Isaiah 9 and verse number 3, we could say God is the ultimate joy giver. And I don't think anyone would argue that. And so, but if your connection with God is severed by sin, what does that mean about the joy God is just waiting to give you? You ain't going to get it. Is it a comforting thought to you Now, to those of you who truly believe in prayer, and I hope that's everybody here, is it a comforting thought to you that God answers your prayers? We love that, don't we? How comforting or how joyful does it sound to know that sin can cause God to, in a sense, cover himself with a cloud so that prayer should not pass through? That's in the Bible, Lamentations 3:44. How do you get joy from that? To know that I can so sin in such a way and keep on sinning where God says, you're cut off. Pray to me all you want to, but I'm not going to answer. Y'all like that idea? How else you going to get God? How else you going to petition God for anything? Go and sin no more because it's going to rob you of joy. Here's number 4. Sin hurts. And most people are okay with that. Believe it or not, you'll talk to some people like, well, that I know it hurts, and I'm okay with that because it's my sin, it's my body, it's my whatever. It's my life, and it hurts me, and I'm okay with that. Sin doesn't just hurt you. It hurts God as well. God does feel things, you know. He's not just some God we are not, we're not deists, where God's just like out in the universe somewhere and he's just totally forgot about us, and he's a cold-hearted God who just like snapped his fingers and created the earth and all that's in it, and then he just dipped out. That's not the God of the Bible. God feels things. He feels love, he feels joy and anger and sorrow and jealousy. We even have a verse, Psalm 2, verse 4, which says, he who sits in the heaven shall laugh. Why does sin hurt God? Because God values relationships. Your God that you read about in the Bible, that you say you believe in, he values meaningful relationship with his greatest creation, and that's you. And sin doesn't just hurt you, it doesn't just hurt God, but it hurts other people too. You don't live in a bubble. You're not an island to yourself. So don't pretend like you don't know that your actions affect somebody else, and maybe a whole lot of people. Exodus chapter 20 is where you find the first written recording of the 10 Commandments. In verse 12 through 17 of Exodus 20 lists the last 6 of the 10 Commandments. Honor your father and mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. You shall not covet. What do all those have in common? Other people. Read them again. Other people. Those commands, they regulate behavior towards other people. Think about it. They protect relationships. Those 6 commands, they protect relationships. They protect the society that we live in. You got to read them. And we find that they're all summed up in one saying, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. That's in the New Testament. Romans chapter 10 and verse 13. Romans chapter 13 and verse 9. So if they were meant to be followed, to protect other people, those commandments we read, if they're meant to be followed to protect other people, then breaking them, which would be sinning, what's that going to do to people? It's not going to protect them. It's going to do what? It's going to hurt them. It's going to hurt them. Romans 13 and verse 10. Love does no harm to a neighbor. But sin does. Sin does. No matter how private you think your sin is, it hurts other people. So we can stop hurting God. We can stop hurting ourselves, of course, and we can stop hurting other people when we determine to do what Jesus said, just go and sin no more. Here's the last one. Y'all knew this was coming, probably. Sin's got eternal consequences. And I don't know, this is probably another one that we don't like to think about either. It's too far in the future. Ain't gonna happen to me yet. I got plenty of time, that kind of thing. Proverbs 6, verse 27, 28 is asking the rhetorical questions. It says, can a man take fire to his bosom and his clothes not be burned? Can one walk on hot coals and his feet not be seared? The law of cause and effect that we live with every single day, that law of cause and effect is something that you cannot ignore when it comes to spiritual matters. That matters in the physical world, law of causality, and it's effective in the spiritual world. What on God's green earth, what in nature, what are you looking at? What are you hearing that gives you the idea that you can commit sin and do some kind of harm and there not be consequences that come from it? You throw a ball up above your head and you don't move, what's going to happen? We say, oh, well, I'll tell you what. Well, I'll tell you why I do the things I do is because I'm not suffering. Consequences don't come right away. That's why. And that's true. That's absolutely true. In the Bible, it says, because the sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, therefore the hearts of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil. That's Ecclesiastes 8 and verse 11. So yeah, it's true. I go out, I can commit these things, and I can live this way, and yeah, I'm totally fine. The consequences don't come right away. But isn't it true that the bill always comes due? Ecclesiastes, same chapter, chapter 8 and verse 13. But it will not be well with the wicked. That's people who sin. Don't think that you have to commit certain kind of sins for a certain amount of time before the Bible classifies you as wicked or evil. All sin is wicked and all sin is evil. It will not be well with the wicked, nor will he prolong his days, which are as a shadow, because he does not fear before God. Sin's consequences are eternal if you don't do something about it right now. And you know, I think one of the worst consequences of dying in my sin is going to have to be the loneliness of hell. Have you ever thought about hell being lonely? That might sound strange at first because maybe many of our minds, we go to that passage where Jesus is teaching that there's going to be far more people dying lost than there will be dying saved. That's Matthew 7, 13 and 14. I'm like, well, how can hell be lonely? I'm going to be there with a lot of people. No, I'm not going to like being there, but I'm not going to be lonely. Just think about it in this sense. 2 Thessalonians chapter 1 and verse 9 is talking about what's going to happen when Christ comes back. And he talks about two groups of people specifically, those who do not know God and those who do not obey the gospel. And he says of these two, he says, these shall be punished with everlasting destruction from the presence of the Lord and from the glory of his power. That's been interpreted a number of different ways. And they say, well, the destruction is just going to come from him. Now, I don't think it means that. That means to be away from. They're going to be punished away from the presence of the Lord. It's the idea of banishment and separation and isolation. The loneliness of hell is going to be suffered by a lot of people because they're no longer going to have by their side the only one who died to set them free from the sin that promised them everything and gave them nothing. We think back to the woman in John chapter 8 that Jesus spoke to. She might have gotten out of that situation. She got away with her life there that she was in, and that was in the past, but she could not go back to her sinful lifestyle and think that she was going to be right with God, which is exactly why Jesus told her, go and sin no more. And let's just be clear that he's not demanding perfection. He's just demanding faithfulness. Get out of the sin And you do everything in your power to stay out of that sin. Go and sin no more. Let me close with this. There was a man who was very, very sick. In fact, he was dying and he knew it. And as he lay in his bed, you know, he had so many people who loved him and they were all coming up to him and visiting him. And he would hear them ask, is there anything we can do for you? And he would always, you know, very weakly lift his hand up and say, no, thank you, but there's nothing you can do. And he knew this was it. And then weeks went by and months went by, and he knew that now it was really it. The end of his life was just right around the corner, and of course, he still had loving family and friends coming to see him, and somebody asked him, is there something I can do for you? And again, he said, no. But then in a very desperate, very weak tone, he said this. He says, but is there anything that you can undo? Is there anything that you can undo? How is it going to feel to have the guilt of past sins eating at you as you know eternity is right around the corner? I would not wish that on my worst enemy. That's torture. And in fact, I would rather be physically tortured to death, knowing that after that's over, I get to go to heaven and be saved. I would rather go through that than being on my deathbed, trapped in my own mind, wondering and being scared to death if I have been forgiven by God or not, or trapped in my own mind, begging God to allow me just one more chance to obey the gospel, or one more chance to come forward. One more chance to get in the waters of baptism and have my sins washed away by the blood of Jesus Christ. Folks, what are you afraid of the most? We're all scared of things. We all have phobias. Yeah, you know what I'm asking. What are you afraid of the most? What do you hate the most? I'm telling you, it has to be, you need to love God and love his word the most, Jesus the most. But you got to hate the sin that's going to separate you from God forever. You got to hate it, folks. And you know what Jesus would tell you? He's not going to do this. But if he were to come to you today and he found you living in sin, you know what he would say to you? In all the compassion that he had and that you could imagine, he would look at you and say, go and sin no more. And doing that would include obeying his gospel. And what I'm asking you is, have you done that? Have you obeyed the gospel? I know you believe the gospel. Have you obeyed the gospel? Have you repented of your sins? Maybe you want to study more about that. Have you confessed your belief in Jesus Christ, that he's the Son of God? Maybe you want to study more about that. Have you been baptized in water to have your sins washed away? Calling on the name of the Lord? Maybe you want to study more about that. The Bible's got a lot to say about it. Have you determined, and are you right now living a faithful life? You know what that means? Maybe we should study about that. But maybe you have obeyed the gospel and you're going and sinning. And it could be that you have known that you needed to do something about whatever's going on for a long time, and maybe today's the day. Man, I hope it is. I want to help you. I wish you'd open up to me. I want to help you so bad to get right with God. And I know this is a loving congregation. We care about going to heaven here. We love souls. If I'm not speaking for you, just get up and go. But we love souls. And I care about whether you're saved or lost. And I hope you'll make whatever decision needs to be made today. It might be that you're just struggling. And we struggle in our faith sometimes, and you need the prayers of the church, and oh, I want so badly to pray for you. Well, you just gotta let me know. Let us know. You need the prayers of the church? You need some kind of help in any way? Let us know. You come forward, I'll be right there. Come forward and give you a big old hug. Let's stand and sing the invitation song.